Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakaruttam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi abahu purushakaram shankhachakrasidharinam sahasra shirasam shvetam pranamami patanjalim harihi om. Vasudeva sutam devam kamsachanuramardanam devaki paramanandam krishnam vande jagadgurum sarvopanishado gavo Dugdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsaha Sudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gitamritam Mahat Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. So Srimad Bhagavad Gita, also known as the Yoga Shastra, the text or the scripture of yoga, in this we were studying the 4th chapter. No, 4th. In our previous class, we studied the 4th shloka of the 4th chapter, which was a question by Arjuna. Earlier, Sri Krishna had declared that these divine teachings were taught to me, to the sun, and to Manu, one of the forefathers. This prompted Arjuna to ask the question that your birth took place just a few years before I was born, and Manu, one of the human ancestors, extremely ancient, they took birth eons ago. How is it that you taught these teachings to them? And in great detail we discussed and analyzed what the mystical statement of Sri Krishna stands for. Now we will start with studying the answer of Sri Krishna, which is the 5th shloka, which is on page number 72. This is an answer to Arjuna's question, in which Krishna tells him that both of us had many births before the present one. So what I taught, I'm not talking about this present birth, the Krishna that is standing in front of you, but its essence, which has been present here forever and will be present forever. So let us first pronounce the shloka and then we will understand it. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
In case you don't have it yet, it's on page number 72. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Bahuni.
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 Me. Vyatitani.
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 Janmani.
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 Tavacha.
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 Arjuna.
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 Tanyaham.
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 Veda.
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 Sarvani.
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 Natvam.
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 Vetha.
Veta.
Vetha.
Veta.
Vetha.
Veta.
Parantapa.
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 Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacha Arjuna. Tanyaham veda sarvani natvam vetha parantapa. So in this shloka, Shri Krishna says, Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacha Arjuna. Bahuni, many. Bahuni me, my. Janmani, births. Many births. Vyatitani have already passed. And not only my, but also yours. Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacha Arjuna, O Arjuna, and yours also. So Krishna tells him that both of us, Krishna and Arjuna, Nara and Narayana, the human being and the abode of human being, both have had many births before the present one. Now this goes into the idea of rebirth. So let us discuss a little bit the idea of rebirth as it is explained by the masters of yoga and Vedanta. Only then, when we have a little bit of understanding what is meant by this, we'll be able to understand what Krishna is trying to say. Of course, the discussions are very detailed and highly complex, so I'll try to keep it as easy and as short as possible for now. an understanding of the idea of rebirth comes when a person meditates and analyzes his dream content. And that is the reason, one of the reasons why sage Patanjali, when speaking of methods for inner purification, 7 methods which he calls chitta parikarma, polishing of the mind content, 7 methods to polish the mind content, in which he mentions friendliness, compassion, etc. as the first method, developing, cultivating these qualities. Then he also mentions pranayama, and in that context he says that a mind which contemplates, which analyzes the experience that one has in the dreaming state of consciousness and in deep sleep, such a mind also naturally becomes inclined towards stability, prasada, stillness, inner stillness. Swapna, nidra, jnana, alambanam va. This is the sutra by Patanjali. Swapna jnana, the experience that a person has in the dreaming state of consciousness, and nidra jnana, the experience that a person has in deep sleep when there is no dream at all. By analyzing this, he does not analyze it himself, because prior to him, already in the Upanishads, especially in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, one of the most detailed Upanishad, dedicates chapters and chapters together on analyzing the experience of dream. So we will look a little bit at that, because that will make us capable of understanding why the idea of rebirth came into existence. So first of all, we will look at the example, what happens when we dream. We have a body, like we have a body in the waking state of consciousness, we also have a body in the dreaming state of consciousness. So which means we are experiencing a body, we see that we have a body in our dreams. What is there? What exists there in the dreaming state of consciousness? According to the analysis of the masters, there are 4 things there. The first thing is the body in the dream world, with which we identify and say, idam aham asmi, this is what I am. The moment that body comes under threat from any other entity in the dream world, we feel frightened, and all the normal emotions that we have in the waking state of consciousness come up, because we very strongly identify with that physical body. We think this is what I am, even though in reality we are everything. We are also the lion that is attacking us. It's not different from us, it's our own creation, we have created it. Yet we don't identify with the body of that lion, but we identify with that particular body with which we are identifying in that dream world. That body is obviously, it is imaginary, it is a creation of the mind, and it is unreal. It has no real existence except in the dreaming state of consciousness, where it seems as real as this body seems now. In this waking state of consciousness, it seems equally real, yet it is not. We know it is not, but it seems. This body gets destroyed the moment we wake up and our dream is over. That body gets completely destroyed, and it keeps on changing every time we go back into the dream world. We have a new body. Every time we go back into the dream world, we have a new body. Today we had a body, then we wake up, then we again go back. Sometimes we are there without a body, but sometimes we are there with a body, and this body keeps on changing. Sometimes it is the body that we have in our waking state of consciousness, and sometimes it is a very different body. Yet to us it completely seems like my own body. Yet it is when we wake up and when we remember that body was very different than with which I identified. That body was completely different than the one that I'm having now. So it changes with every new dream. So this is the first thing, the body in the dream world, which is imaginary, a mental construction constructed by the mind. Then the second thing. The second thing is more subtle. The second thing is that mental impression that is there within the mind, which comes up in the dream world in the form of that body. That mental impression, that memory, the subtle impression which has been impressed upon our mind and which comes up in the form of that body. That is what we call samskara, subtle impressions. The yogis, the Vedantins, when Patanjali uses the word samskara, when Vedantins use the word samskara, they mean these subtle impressions. They are impressed upon our consciousness, upon our mind, as a result of the experiences that we have in our life and the actions that we perform in our life. Every action and every experience impresses a subtle impression in the unconscious mind. It only comes up into our consciousness when we become aware of it. For example, if I tell you that, think about your mother. How does she look like? The moment the picture of our mother comes up in our mind, the moment I said it and it triggered this memory, you were not thinking about your mother, I suppose. But the moment I said it, something triggered it, pulled it out, and it came into the awareness. So it was in an unconscious state. That's a samskara, by definition, is an unconscious thing. We are not conscious of it, but it is there, and when it comes up and we become aware of it, then we call it a vritti. Patanjali uses the word vritti, a mental modification, and it usually comes up as what we call a smriti, a memory. The fact that we can remember things, even though we are not conscious of our samskaras, we don't know what all is buried down there, we have no access to that unconscious aspect of ourselves, but the fact that we can remember what has happened to us since our childhood tells us that something got impressed in our mind which comes up as this memory. This is what is called samskara, and that is what we are translating as subtle impression. And that underlies every dream body that is there. It is the entity that comes up. It is that subtle impressions which come up in the dream world and present themselves in the form of everything that we see, and especially the entity that we are concerned with, our own samskara, our own physical body. We have a samskara of our own self because we have experienced our own self. We have a samskara of our ego, an experience of ego in the waking state of consciousness, and that is with this body, we identify this. When this comes up, then it is the samskara of the experience of this body in waking state of consciousness which comes up in the dreaming state of consciousness as the body that we see, with which we identify. If it's a different body, if it's not this body, if it's a different body, then it is a memory. Somewhere it must have got impressed, that form must have got impressed into our mind, which is coming up there as that body, whether it is one single body that we must have experienced in the waking state of consciousness, or it is putting together many experiences in the form of that body, but every body that we identify with in the dreaming state of consciousness, that is dependent on a samskara. And this samskara is not something imaginary. It is actually there. That is the reason we can remember. So that samskara, the body that we see, the body that we experience, that is imaginary. But the samskara is real. The samskara is actually there. In the sense that it was there before we fell asleep, and it will remain there after we wake up as well. That subtle impression remains there. And this is what the masters of the Upanishads, when they explain the experience of dream, what they say, that sayatra praswapiti, when a person falls asleep, asya lokasya, from this world of experience, from the waking state of consciousness, sarvavataha, which contains everything to be experienced, because this is the world in which we experience, in which we have experiences. So it is sarvavato, it is an all-containing world in which we experience everything. Matramapadaya, we take with us bits of these experiences. Matra means bits. This is what we are calling samskara. The samskaras, what Freud called the day residues. His technical word for samskara, his technical word for the word that matra, which has been used here, is day residue. Memories of people and objects and events of the preceding day or days in our life. Matra mapadaya, he takes them, he carries them with him, swayam vihatya, and this physical body falls down. And not only does it fall down, it is literally paralyzed. Psychologists know this very well. This is called dream paralysis. If our mind would not literally paralyze our body, we would enact everything that is happening in the mind during dream in our physical body, which means we would never be able to sleep. And sometimes in those states in between, when we are half awake and half asleep, and dream paralysis has already taken over, many people experience it actually as if they would be awake, because the body is the only thing that does not get paralyzed is the eyeballs. That is the only thing that does not get paralyzed. Everything else gets paralyzed when we are seeing dreams. These are well-researched scientific psychological studies about the dream. So, swayam vihatya, the body lies in a paralyzed state, the body is completely left behind, and swayam nirmaya, and the dreamer creates a new body out of these subtle impressions. Svena bhasa, he also creates the entire world to be seen. Svena jyotisha, in the light of his own awareness, he becomes the visible world, and he becomes the viewer as well, the witness as well, both, and praswapiti. This is how he sleeps. So the idea of matra, the idea of day residues, the idea of samskaras underlies the experience of the dream body. So that is the second thing. First thing, the dream body, the body in a dream, and then the samskaras. The third thing that is equally important for the dream body to come into existence is the forgetfulness of one's true essential nature in the waking state of consciousness. We have to forget what we are. If we don't forget that, it won't work. Sleep does it for us. The moment when we fall asleep, we forget what we are, what we think what we are in the waking state of consciousness. And it is this forgetfulness, it is this, when we forget something, we actually still have a feeling that maybe we are not remembering something, we are forgetting something. But here we completely become oblivious. We have no awareness even of that we ever had this physical body. Otherwise there would be a contradiction in the experience of our dream. If the moment we have another body, we would suspect something is wrong. But we don't. We think this is what we are. We completely identify completely with it. So we completely forget what we were in the waking state of consciousness. So this third thing, which in Sanskrit would be called avidya, the complete absence of any memory, any awareness, any knowledge, that is the third aspect. And of course the fourth and the most important aspect in Vedanta, because the purpose of analyzing the rest of the three is only to create an awareness of the fourth one, which is the conscious self, which is experiencing and creating the entire dream world, the conscious self. Ultimately, Vedanta, if it analyzes the dream world, it does not analyze it for the same reason for which, for example, Freud tried to analyze the experience of dream. Vedanta is not interested in that. Vedanta is interested in the pure self, the pure conscious being which experiences the waking state of consciousness, the dreaming state of consciousness, and deep sleep. Vedanta is ultimately only interested in that. That is the most important entity for Vedanta. The conscious being, the conscious self, or when I say conscious self, it seems as if self and consciousness are two different things. Self contains consciousness in it. No, that's not how Vedanta sees it. Vedanta sees consciousness itself as the self, the entity to which the experience is happening, the entity that is identifying with the experience. So these are the four things, and that is the entity which experiences all the dreams and all the bodies that it gets in the dreaming state of consciousness. Now, with this analysis in our mind, we can make sense of the analysis that we find in the Upanishads about the experience of rebirth, the experience of reincarnation. The physical body that is there in the waking state of consciousness, which we experience and of which we are equally convinced that this is the ultimate reality, this is the truth. This physical body, that would be the first entity, sthula sharira, with which we identify. This is the first thing. Then the second thing, there we had samskaras. Similarly, here also we have samskaras. The same samskaras are doing the job. The same samskaras that are doing the job throughout all those bodies that we experience in our dreams. The same reservoir of samskaras is present here also. Now, how does that take place? This is what they call sukshma sharira, the subtle body. When the Vedantins, they explain the subtle body, what is the subtle body? The subtle body is just the energy or the life force that is present within the physical body, which manifests in the form of 17 entities that are at work in the physical body. This is how the Upanishads explain Sapta Dashaka Linga, the 17 entities that are at work in our physical body, which which are the 5 senses of perception, the 5 senses of action, that makes it 10, the 5 pranas, prana, apana, vyana, samana and udana, these 5 pranas, this makes it 15, manas and buddhi, the mind and the intellect. These 17, which the Upanishads explain simply as a manifestation of prana or life force that is present within this body. So what happens in the moment of death, when prana, when the life force leaves the body, what actually leaves? That is the entity that leaves, the entity that departs the physical body and after which nothing remains in the physical body. This is what the masters, the Upanishadic masters, they called prana, the life force. And that prana, that life force, they see as the carrier of these samskaras, these subtle impressions, because they are impressed upon the unconscious mind. The mind merges back into its cause, prana itself. So when prana departs, that prana also carries all those subtle impressions that have been impressed upon the unconscious mind throughout this life. So in the Upanishadic understanding, in the understanding of the Upanishads, when the prana leaves the body, then it carries with it 3 things. Tam vidya karmani samanvarabhete purva prajnacha. 3 things. Vidya. Vidya means the impressions of all the experiences that we had in our life. Some of them might be stronger, some of them might be weaker, but all of them are present. The impressions of all the experiences that we had in our life, this is the first thing, vidya. The second thing, the impressions of all deeds that a person has committed in his life, that is the second thing. And the third thing is purva prajna. Purva prajna is explained the desire that remains within us latent. Again, this is just a form of an impression, but impression of desires that remain latent as a result of our experience of pleasures. When we experience something as pleasurable, this is what Patanjali explains, raga. Attachment. What is attachment? Sukhanushai ragaha. The moment we experience a pleasurable object, it creates a desire. After the experience is over, we want to have more of it. We want to have it again. So that latent desire, which keeps on coming back again and again into our awareness and decides the course we take in our waking state of consciousness, as well as mostly also the course of our dream world, those latent desires, these 3 things, they are 3 things, but ultimately they are just impressions in that unconscious mind. These 3 things, which are just, we bundle them together into one word as samskara. Sometimes the word samskara is used, sometimes the word samskara and vasana. These 2 words are often used in the spiritual literature. And the idea is that the next birth will be according to these samskaras, in the same way as the body that we take in our dream world is in accordance to our subtle impressions. Similarly, the new body that the prana will take will be in accordance to these samskaras. These samskaras will be the ultimate deciding force which decide which body the individual soul is about to choose. And this is when Aitareya Aranyaka from the Rig Veda, an Aranyaka text which is a contemplative text, a text that was composed as a result of contemplation in the deep forests. That is why it is called Aranyaka. Aranyaka means composed in the forests. Yatha pradyam hi sambhavaha. The births that individuals take, that is according to their prajyas, according to their samskaras, the accumulated samskaras. And this is how, to give a very practical example, the masters usually give this example of child prodigy. Some children, they have this innate capabilities which seem to be outstanding and excellent. That thing, and also of course individual temperament. Two siblings born to same parents and who were raised up in the same environment, yet have tremendously different traits. And these traits are fairly visible from the very beginning of child's after birth. Just a few days after birth, you can see them. There have been a lot of studies. So this individual temperament is explained, and the fact that we have child prodigies, these two things are generally, even by Shankaracharya in his commentary on Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, he gives this example, that for many people, what seems impossible for many people, for a child, it comes very naturally. For many children, that comes very naturally. Why? Because the samskaras are already present. We just need something to awaken. For others, even some simple tasks are extremely difficult. So like this. I will not go more into this. That's enough for this discussion. If somebody is interested in going deeper, then a text that explores this in depth is Many Lives and Many Masters by Brian Weiss, which seems to explore this aspect in greater detail. The subtitle of the book reads, "The True Story of a Prominent Psychiatrist, His Young Patient, and the Past Life Therapy Which Changed Both Their Lives." And it was one of the best sellers. Over 1.5 billion or million copies got sold of this book. It's a very famous book which explores this aspect. So in any case, coming back to the idea of Vedanta, these samskaras are considered extremely powerful, which means a samskara does not fade away till it gives its appropriate result. A seed has to lead to its fruit. Its completion is in creating a fruit, and therefore we find these statements that nabhuktam kshiyate karma kalpakoti shatairapi. The karmas that we have committed, till we don't experience their fruits, they don't get destroyed, even if eons have passed. Avashyameva bhoktavyam kritam karma shubhashubham. Any good and bad deeds that we have performed at some point their results have to be experienced. This is the law of karma. So the idea of rebirth is deeply related to the idea of karma. Karma is actually not the complete word. The complete word is karma samskara. We use, karma is your karmas, my karmas. We use this word so commonly in the West also. Everybody seems to understand what we mean by that today. Yet, karma simply means action. We are not talking about actions. We are talking about the subtle impressions that these actions have impressed upon our mind. They are called karma samskaras. And we are just using the word karma as short for the whole word karma samskara. We do that in Sanskrit, and that is how we also do it in English. But it stands not for action, but for the impressions that have been impressed upon the mind as a result of those actions. The only thing that, according to the understanding of Vedanta, Buddhism, and all these spiritual doctrines, the only thing that can burn these accumulated karma samskaras, which, because from the time they get accumulated and from till the time they are experienced, this one particular karma samskara gets destroyed with this experience. But in the meantime, so many new karma samskaras have been produced, which means there is never an end. This is that ever-flowing river in which again and again, as it flows towards its ultimate goal, on the way, so many new tiny little streams merge into it, and it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. In the same way, this is also so the only thing that completely destroys all these karmas, that completely burns them, that is the experience of universal unity, the mystical experience of universal oneness. And that is why when we meditate on fire, for example, in the Vedic teachings, there are hymns and hymns dedicated to the fire. It actually symbolizes the fire of knowledge. And we find this in the fourth chapter that we are studying. Yathaidhansi samidhognir bhasmasat kurute Arjuna. Like fire destroys all the wooden logs that are there, completely annihilates them. Similarly, Jnana Agni, the fire of wisdom, the fire of this experience, this mystical experience, sarva karmani bhasmasat kurute tatha. In the same way, like that fire annihilates all the logs, all the wooden sticks, similarly, this fire of wisdom also annihilates all karmas. So the only thing that can annihilate this reservoir of karma samskaras, which is called karmashaya in Sanskrit, another word, karmashaya, the reservoir of karmas, of karma samskaras, that gets only destroyed by the fire of wisdom. Nothing else can destroy that. And it is these samskaras which decide three things. They decide not only our birth. Patanjali explains this in his Yoga Sutras. Jati, birth, Ayu, our lifespan, and the experiences, the good and bad experiences that we have in our life. But remember, this reservoir is a very flexible thing. It's not something that is ingrained completely and cannot be changed. By performing good deeds, actually, we are outnumbering the bad ones and making our good samskaras more powerful. So this is the whole idea of performing karma yoga, of performing actions for universal well-being, and all these ideas that come there. So now samskara, that is the second thing. The third thing, there we required forgetfulness. Similarly here also, for this physical body to come into existence, we need a subtle body. We have discussed what the subtle body is. And then we need what the Vedantins call the causal body, Karana Sharira, which is nothing but forgetfulness of one's true essential nature, what is called avidya. Patanjali calls it avidya, The yogis call it avidya and the Vedantins call it avidya, which is the first of the 5 kleshas, the first amongst the 5 fundamental causes of suffering. And that is what Patanjali refers to as the mula, as the very root. These samskaras can only produce their fruits till their root is present. If you cut away the root, which is that avidya, that forgetfulness of one's true essential nature, the moment that comes, then their root is destroyed. And when the root is destroyed, a tree cannot bear fruits anymore. So the root, in Patanjali's words, sati mule, if the root is present, which is avidya, ignorance, and then of course it's for effects, tad vipakaha, they ripe into jati, birth, ayu, lifespan, and bhoga, good and bad experiences. So that is the third thing, the karana sharira of the Vedantins, the causal body of the Vedantins. And the fourth thing is, of course, pure consciousness. The entity that is having the experience, the entity that is experiencing all these bodies created by the samskaras. That is the most important. Again, I must remind, that is the most important thing. To create an awareness of that entity is the most important thing for a Vedantin, because the idea of rebirth is important for religion, not for mysticism. Let me make this very clear. Mysticism does not require the idea of rebirth. Religion does, because religion tells us that if you perform this and this good deeds, you will have good and good results to experience, either in this life or in your next lives. So this Buddhism in its religious aspect, Hinduism in its religious aspect, Jainism, Sikhism, all these religions, and also Christianity, Islam, and Judaism speak of afterlife. Even if they don't speak of rebirth, at least they speak of a life after death. They require it. Religion requires it. Religion cannot exist without the idea of having something after this body has perished. It depends on that idea. Mysticism doesn't. For the mystic, the most important thing is the entity which is already present here and now, pure consciousness itself, and these are just tools to create an awareness of that. To put it succinctly, there was a preacher, he was a religious preacher. He came to his master, to a master, and to a mystic, and he was preaching about life after death, having discussions about life after death. The master asks him, the mystic asks him, that according to you, you believe that your soul will be in heaven. Is that what you believe? He says, yes. Then the mystic asks, and your body will be in the grave? Yes. Yes. But then my question is, where will you be? If your soul will be in the heaven and your body will be in the grave, then where will you be? Now, it's not important to get an answer to that. It just makes us aware, this question makes us aware of what really a mystic, a Vedantin, is ultimately concerned with. That consciousness, that pure consciousness. In any case, natasya prana utkramanti, in the understanding of the Upanishads, the pranas of a self-enlightened being don't leave the body. At the moment of death, or when a person experiences asamprajñāta samadhi in the state of the highest state of yoga, the idea is, because there are no more sanskaras that have to be carried, all of them have been destroyed, their carrier, which is the subtle body, that has become needless. And because of that, the energy The omnipresent, it just, this individual energy just merges back into the omnipresent energy, and there is nothing to be retained. So, natasya prana utkramanti, for a self-enlightened being, the Upanishads are very clear that his pranas don't leave. Atraiva samaviliyante. They just merge into the omnipresent entity, which is also present here and now. So, in every possible way, a mystic is not concerned with rebirth, because the mystic ultimately is concerned. There comes to me another beautiful dialogue between a master and his student, that students were having these discussions about afterlife, like we were having these discussions, and nobody could really decide whether there was afterlife or not. The master remained completely silent. He did not answer. He did not say anything to them. And then later on, one of those students, he said, everybody was presenting their thoughts. Why you didn't say anything? Then he said, to me it seems that only those are concerned with afterlife who don't know what to do with this life. And then the student still persists. He says, but okay, yes, I understand that, but my question is, what do you think? Is it really there? Is there some afterlife or not? Then he said, my boy, the question is whether there is life before death or not. That should be the question. So this is ultimately where mysticism leads us, where the Upanishadic teachings, where the teachings of the Upanishads, where the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita ultimately leads us to. But still, the teachings that Bhagavan Sri Krishna is giving here to Arjuna, these are important. These are there, these give us an insight. We saw how this insight works. Our experiences of the dreaming reality help us to explain what the masters are trying to convey through these teachings. This certainly won't answer all our questions. For that we would have to analyze more and more, study more and more, to go deeper more and more. But this was just discussed by me to have a basic understanding of what Punarjanma, when Sri Krishna speaks of that many births have passed in my case and many births have passed in your case, we both have traveled through many births. These were the ideas that were present in the thinking mind of India, and which formed the very foundation. They had already been beautifully formulated in the Upanishads, which is one of the foundational scriptures, one of the most ancient scriptures before Buddhism came into existence, before Hinduism had its separate, distinct identity. And therefore these ideas are equally present in Buddhism, in Hinduism, in Jainism, and in Sikhism. So there is still a lot more to be discussed about this shloka. We will have to discuss the idea of, we discussed the idea of reincarnation. Now we'll have to discuss the idea of incarnation, because this idea of incarnation is also present there. The fact that self-enlightened beings can come back into this world, pure consciousness can descend into this world and take bodies for the well-being of this world. These ideas which are there, these ideas have also to be discussed for some better understanding. So this is where actually this entire context of these 4, 5, 6 shlokas is taking us to, because this is one of the places where the idea of incarnation incarnation in the form of Buddha, incarnation in the form of Rama, Krishna, all these great souls. And this is a very, very universal idea. When we go deeper into that, we see that it's a very universal idea. So we will discuss that as well. This is what these shlokas are now about. So if there are still any questions, please let me know. Then we just...
Yes, when we will discuss about these great souls that are coming back? When is that?
Next Wednesday. At 11:30. We have decided to keep the time as it suits everybody. So we will discuss that on 11:30. Yes?
Jesus Christ was born like in human form, no? And we could say that he had a very bad karma by the drama that happened in his life. What you can say about that? Like he knew the play that will unroll while he was alive, no? So like, how you can explain this karma samskara?
I think the whole answer to that is already there in Christian theology itself. First of all, he took upon the bad karmas of many upon himself and suffered for their sake. So he took it upon himself. So this is how Christian theology actually explains it. And the second thing, every human being approximately takes a human birth. The idea is that every human being, the fact that, because all great saints and sages and masters had to suffer in their lives. Like Ramana Maharshi, like Guruji, everybody had to suffer. Somebody's sufferings were greater, somebody's sufferings were less. But sufferings were there. And this is the very nature. When does a person get a human body? Usually the idea about a human body is that approximately when the good karmas and the bad karmas are present in equal amounts, then approximately, not completely, but approximately in an equal amount, that is when a soul takes a human body. Now, obviously, they will have to experience not only the good karmas, but also the bad karmas. But someone, this is where mysticism comes into a picture, someone who has completely detached himself from his physical body and has been able to acquire what the yogis, when they use the word videha, the states of meditation in which a person is completely disembodied, which he loses this strong sense of identity with his body, then whatever is happening to their body does not affect that person. So to us it seems that Christ is suffering tremendously. To us it seems that Ramakrishna Paramahamsa is suffering tremendously. Ask them, are they suffering? No. What is happening is just on the physical level. So there are various ways of looking at it. Again, there are two very, in this answer I'm trying to bring together two very different streams of thought, because Christianity is a very different stream of thought, and what we are discussing here is a very different stream of thought. But just to make sense of that from this viewpoint, this would be approximately the way we would make sense of it. Because everybody had to, and Rama had to suffer, Krishna had to suffer, everybody. When the moment we dream, the moment we enter a dream, suffering and pleasure and pain, these are parts of this level of reality. And this cannot be stopped. Anybody who comes onto this level of reality will have to go through both of them, because
But this you could really see by Guruji also.
Yeah.
On the last few days before he left his body, he was knowing that he's living, and he was completely quiet, peaceful, and not you couldn't see that he's suffering. He was all the time with the smile and like this. And he said that he left his body already. He said it. So,
Yeah.
And then I remember Swami Rama. He was also, when he was very sick,
Yeah.
because he left his body. They also they say because he has taken so much karma from the people on him. I don't know, but this is what
is
Ramana Maharshi,
yeah.
they say like this.
Is it possible that somebody else overtake your karma?
Obviously it is. I don't know. That is a deep mystical question, and mysterious question whether it is really possible. Obviously it might be. That is the reason they are saying it.
Yeah, but then it's again our karma that somebody overtakes.
Yes, it is.
Sometimes it appears that children can take part of their parents' karma. If you look at the way that life is lived and repeated,
Yes.
it can appear to be that way.
Yes.
You also, from the parents that you've chosen,
Yes. You are also taking their karmas into you. Yes.
With thinking of some of these enlightened beings like Jesus Christ, it's also possible that they found that pure consciousness during their life, that they didn't come into the world with that pure consciousness.
Many of them, yes. Many of them,
We
yes.
are made to believe that, that they were born that way, but it's also very possible.
Yes.
Like Buddha himself,
Yes.
he was a person married, he had his family, and
Yes.
wishes and all of that.
Yes. And then
Also after that,
Exactly.
they came to pure consciousness.
exactly.
Many religions want us to believe
As if they
born-
they were born
Yeah,
with that. Yes.
yeah.
No.
It's not
No.
necessary.
It's not necessarily true. No.
I have also one question. In science, there is a concept of clone.
Yes.
Must be knowing.
Yes.
Suppose we make a clone.
Clone with the cells of something like an exact replica.
Yeah.
They do a sheep now.
Yeah. Cloned sheep, such as cloned sheep. Yes.
Clone, yeah.
Yeah.
Just imagine that scientists make a clone of you. So he will be also talking like you, giving discourses like you. Then if both of them are having two souls, if they are two souls, then how they are equals? Because if they are two souls, there must be some differences in their sanskaras. But this concept of clone, I think your clone or my clone, that will be equal.
I think the clone would only be of the physical body, because we are talking here about the sthula sharira, about the physical body.
Same, behavior is also same.
That's hypothetical, though.
Yes, I know.
It's hypothetical. It's hypothetical because it doesn't
It's
exist.
hypothetical.
So we're talking about a
Yeah,
hypothesis.
we haven't experienced yet.
We can talk about it, but we really don't.
Yeah.
As we know, clones are equal.
But if we have produced a second baby out of just as a thought experiment, and that baby, how would it have all the knowledge that I have accumulated as a result of my studying with my masters and everything and studying? It's not possible unless it has gone through all that. So it cannot be exactly the same replica.
My question is, both have two souls or both same souls?
But it's
Suppose my clone.
asking whether a soul can be cloned?
Yeah, can a soul be cloned?
Okay. I think that the answer to that would be, because in the understanding of the Upanishads, Atman is one and omnipresent. And what gets reflected into this body, into this mind, is just a reflection of that omnipresent entity. Now, as many mirrors as you create, as many reflections there will be. The entity still would remain one and the same, the Atman of the Upanishads. Now here I don't want to make things confusing, because when we use the word soul, we have to be very clear what we mean by the word soul. Because soul in Christianity and Islam and Judaism is a created entity, which is created by God. And it goes into the physical body. This is what is Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body of Vedanta and Yoga. When we talk of Atman, though it is translated as soul many times, we are not talking about this soul. We are talking about that omnipresent pure consciousness reflecting within the subtle body. And that is always one and the same. You can have thousands of mirrors, millions of mirrors, but the reflection, the reflecting entity, the sun, would be one and the same in all those mirrors. Yet the reflections in each one of these mirrors would be distinct. And according to the capacity of the mirror, if the mirror is big, the reflection would be bigger. If the mirror is tiny, the reflection will be tiny. If the mirror is triangle, the reflection, if you use a mirror and project its reflection onto the wall, it will be triangle. If it's round, it will be round. That will be imposing the limitations of the mirror on that light. So the answer would be that ultimately the pure consciousness that the Vedantins are after, that would always remain one and the same, even in the cloned body. But obviously the mind, the entity in which it is reflecting, that entity would be different from body to body, like it is different from your body and my body. Similarly, it will be different from me in the clone, if there could be anything like that. That is hypothetically what I believe would be the case, would be the answer. Whether that would be the case or not, for that we would have to clone a human being first, which hasn't happened yet. So we have to take my answer with caution. That is what the idea predicts to be, at least with my understanding, that should be the answer. But another thing that I would like to remind us is even on a physical level, we carry with us all these genes from our past so-called physical births. And the Human Genome Project is one of the most interesting things. And when it was presented by the President of the United States, he said the first great achievement of human race was to walk on the moon, and the second one is to analyze the human gene. That Human Genome Project. And what they found, they found subtle impressions of all the past, what we had as when we were animals, when we were fish, and all the different ancient, which has come into our genetic pool. So that is another. I have very limited understanding of that. But that seems to be pointing on a physical level as something extremely similar of what the Vedantins have found on the level of the subtle body. What they have found on the level of the subtle body, the scientists seem to have found on the level of the physical body. And that is what gives the Vedantin the idea that we could have gone through many, many other yonis, other lives like this. So it's a deep science, and one can keep on thinking. I've been thinking about these things for decades now, and yet I don't have all the answers. So, Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, Sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shantihi, Shantihi, Shantihi. That clone would produce the perfect replica of the vessel, but the water in it, that cannot be cloned. The water in it cannot be cloned. What will be cloned will just be the vessel, the container. That will be the same. Thank you.